and welcome to Is This Lit? I'm Casey and have I got a tale for you. Before we begin, just a quick question for you. If you're the parent of a small baby and you are bathing said baby and the phone rings, do you A. Ignore the phone and finish bathing the child, B. Pull the drain plug, scoop up the baby in a towel, and carry them over to the phone with you, or C. Leave the baby in the bathtub completely unsupervised while you scurry off to answer the oh-so-important phone call? If you answered C, you just might be a parental figure in the game What Remains of Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch is a first-person, story-driven adventure game developed by Giant Sparrow in 2017. It is currently available for Microsoft Windows, PS4, and Xbox One. Players control the titular character Edith Finch, a young woman revisiting her old family home as she sets out to discover the stories of her many deceased relatives. Yes, that's right, Edith Finch is literally the last Finch left, despite coming from a large family and having had 2 young siblings. And that should be a red flag. Just why do all these Finches meet such untimely ends? The game offers up the idea that the family might be cursed, but I believe that the only curse the Finches suffer from is parental negligence. Dubbed America's most unfortunate family, the Finches believe they are being pursued by a curse. Every member of the family, going back at least 5 generations, has died an untimely death, and only one child from each generation has survived to have children of their own. But why is this? Let's take a look at all those so-called curse victims, and be prepared, most of them are under 13 years old. Chronologically, first we have Molly, the daughter of our main character's maternal grandparents. She perishes in 1947 at just 10 years of age. Cause of death? She got in trouble and was locked in her room and denied dinner, so she compulsively started eating non-edible substances around her room, including toothpaste and highly toxic decorative holly berries. This results in Molly having a hallucinatory experience and ultimately dying. Now, I know it was the 1940s, but food deprivation should just never be used as a punishment for a child. I think most of us can agree on that. And the kid is locked in, at night no less, so there is no way for her to seek help. This whole little vignette also reminds me of the health condition pica. Pica consists of craving and chewing substances that have no nutritional value, such as ice, clay, soil, or paper. However, pica can have causes that aren't due to underlying disease. Examples include stress and nutritional deficiencies. This child was clearly in a stressful situation. And serious question, are they feeding her enough? In her story, she seems insatiably hungry. Perhaps this punishment was a frequent occurrence. Speculation aside, this is one childhood death that could have been avoided. Next on the timeline, we have Barbara, former Shirley Temple-esque child star and current washed-up teen waitress. Now, this death is an odd one, even in this game. All we really know is that Barbara was 16 when she died in what seems to be a home invasion in 1960. It is stated in-game that the cops believe that it is most likely Barbara was murdered by her obsessive #1 fan boyfriend, who also went missing that same night. All that remains of her is a severed ear found in her music box. Without knowing all the facts of what really happened in this case, it's hard to assign blame. All I can say is perhaps the parents should have been a bit more attentive and concerned with home security, knowing that a child star resided on the premises. Also, how hard is it to pick up on the fact that this guy is completely obsessed with your daughter in a very creepy way? I mean, I have to believe that there would be signs before it culminates in murder, right? Next up, we have Calvin, who dies in 1961 at age 11. This one is ridiculously cut and dry case for parental negligence. Are you ready? He dies by flying off a swing placed on the edge of a cliff. Yeah, the edge of a cliff. Were they trying to kill kids? Also, this kid clearly has a cast on his leg when this occurs. Is he being supervised, at all? Then we have the shortest-lived Finch, baby Gregory. He dies in 1977 at just age 1. Gregory's mother leaves him in the bathtub with the sliding shower door shut, and he drowns. Now granted, she had drained the tub before leaving him, but under no circumstances is it okay to walk away from an infant in the tub, full or not. First of all, the tub would have been slippery, and Gregory could have easily slipped and cracked his head, or otherwise injured himself. Humans can drown in even an inch of water, and Gregory manages to turn on the faucet, and you know what follows. I cannot express how incredibly stupid the mother's actions in this story were, and how incredibly preventable this infant death was. Oh, and the other parent literally says, "Oh, it's not your fault. I could feel him slipping away. He was just too happy." Excuse me? He could feel the 1-year-old slipping away. BS. What does that even mean? Immediately following Gregory, we have the death of his brother Gus in 1982 at age 13. Gus dies because he was completely ignored so that his daddy could remarry, completely against the wishes and feelings of his children. Gus's story is narrated through a poem written by his sister Dawn, and it opens with this. Our father never hit us kids, at least not very hard, before the day my brother said with teenage disregard that he'd be dead before he'd see a wedding in our yard. Yeah, child abuse. So, 13-year-old Gus refuses to attend his father's outdoor tent wedding to a woman the children had never even met and decides to fly his kite outside instead. A massive storm breaks out, and I mean a massive, like hurricane-level storm, but all the father does is shout, "Make the music louder," from inside his wedding tent. Gus is completely forgotten outside, and in fact the sister even states that no one remembered him until they found his dead body lying on the ground. Yet another Finch child death that was 100% avoidable. Just throwing it out there that Sam, the father of baby Gregory, Gus, and Dawn, sucks. I mean, really, you already lost one child due to complete neglect. You think you would have actually learned a lesson. Next, we have Milton, whose death is never explicitly stated but can be assumed. He disappears in 2003 at age 11. He was allowed to roam within the secret passages that were for some reason built into the Finch house. His mother, who is also the mother of our main character Edith, as well as Lewis, freaks out and seals off all the passages and deceased Finch's rooms after this, which means his dead and decaying body is just somewhere within the house. Wow. Parenting pro tip: don't let your young kids explore the dangerous rickety infrastructure of an old house. Yet again, another little Finch death that could have been avoided if their parents didn't act like self-obsessed sheeple. And finally, we have Lewis and Edith. Although not technically children, as Lewis dies in 2010 at age 22, and Edith dies in 2017 at age 18, they're close enough, and I'm counting it. Both were so young and their deaths so needless and tragic. I think of all the Finch deaths, I find Lewis's the most heartbreaking. A young man clearly suffering from depression, and gee, I wonder why. I mean, his father died early, his younger brother Milton died at 11, he lives in a house fixated on death, and it's completely isolated in the middle of the woods. This poor guy. He tries to self-medicate with drugs, which seem to work for him to an extent. In, I guess, an attempt to help him, his mother does something so groundbreaking, something that literally no other idiot Finch parent thought to do up until this point. She gets her kid professional help. I know, crazy, right? So this seems like things are going in a positive direction, right? How could I possibly claim parental negligence in this scenario? Well, firstly, this therapist turns out to be a complete moron and is arguably directly responsible for Lewis's death. Okay, you might say, but how could the mother predict that? And you're right, I'm not going to blame her for that one. However, the mother uses the therapist as a replacement parent. She gets her kid professional help and then just kind of washes her hands of the situation. She doesn't attempt to help him work through his problems. She doesn't seem to extend a lot of emotional support. All she really does, in an inspired move, is get the very sensitive, clearly depressed and traumatized young man a job beheading fish at a cannery. Yeah, she couldn't have found a local Walmart, convenience store, fast food place, literally anywhere else. This horrible job, of course, just throws him further into depression, and he starts to disassociate and detach from reality. He begins to retreat into a very vivid internal fantasy world, and guess what? The therapist encourages this. And his boss encourages this. They talk about how methodical, tireless, and focused the boy now is, and apparently that's desirable. It's desirable to be an emotionless robot. The story states, he no longer spoke at work, but his chopping was as reliable as ever. Lewis eventually becomes so detached from reality and invested in his mental world that he commits suicide using the cannery equipment. The mental health system failed the sensitive and struggling young man, and his family support system failed him. He was left floundering, excuse the pun, and eventually saw no meaning in his reality. He needed to be worked with, guided, not forced into drug withdrawal while operating heavy machinery at a fish murder factory. He could have been saved. Let's wrap things up with Edith Finch. Edith dies of complications during childbirth, at 18. Now, I'm not making any judgments whatsoever. Please don't think that. I'm only going to say that perhaps if Edith's childhood had been less chaotic and she had been more guided in life, she wouldn't have been in this situation. She might have also had access to better health care and preventative measures. Not saying that's right, by the way. Unfortunately, in America, it's just the facts. Edith dying means that her unnamed child is the last remaining Finch in the world. We go from intense parental negligence to complete lack of parents. So yeah, what can you expect from a family that, quote, finished building the family cemetery before starting the house? While playing through this game, I just wanted to scream, stop memorializing the dead children and attend to the living ones. This family literally viewed all the children as if they were already dead. Oftentimes they started painting memorial portraits and knitting death shrouds before they even passed away. It's sick. So what killed the Finches? The Finches killed the Finches, and namely the idiotic parents. Hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, it's been lit, fam.